Hello and welcome to my shop. My name is George and I'm coming to you from Chelsea, Quebec. I'm trying something new today and I'd be interested to hear from you either in the comments or many other means that you have available what your reaction is to this. The thing that I'm trying that's new, let's just call it simplify my design. I'm working on something now. I'm building a little shelf, and I've worked out a mechanism whereby the thing can be leveled even after the fact, even if the mounting screws are a little off themselves. And I may have overbuilt it. I have this notion that you've all heard that work expands to fill the available time, work expands to fill the available space. Maybe somebody has said that work expands to meet whatever the budget is and maybe go over a little bit. I don't know. And there's a corollary to that. I haven't heard it, so maybe I'm coming up with it fresh. If so, feel free to call it Fourier-Jos's law. And if that's a mouthful, just call it George's law. And that's that your design is complicated to the degree that your tools are sophisticated and expensive. And I think that's what might have happened to me here. I think maybe my design is more complicated than it needs to be just because I have a good array of tools. Now, they're not all Festool and they're not all Busy Bee or Harbor Freight. They're kind of in the middle. I have a good assortment of tools. And I think in designing this thing, I may have made it more complicated than it needed to be just because I have the tools that let me do that. And that's the feedback that I want from you. I want you to simplify the design. Make it still work the way mine does, at least accomplish the same goals, but do it in a way that's simpler. Clint, I'm expecting to hear from you. Russ, your designs tend to be sophisticated, but give it a shot anyway. And everyone else, either write it in the comments if you have a simplification or a completely different design. But let me go and describe what I've got so far and then leave it to you to react to it. So let me show you what I'm working on. You'll get a better sense of how sophisticated or complicated my design is. It's basically going to be a wall-mounted shelf. Now I haven't yet made the bottom part. This is just a little stand-in to give you the idea. The actual one's going to be a little bit wider and maybe not quite as long. And this thing will just hook onto a wall over by my computer. And it's going to be relatively narrow. Because there's just going to be 2 or 3 manuals on it. One for Visual Basic 6 and another one for Photoshop 12. Yeah. I don't want to learn any more operating systems and I don't want to learn how to use any more software. C, Visual Basic, Windows, Photoshop, they're plenty fine enough for me. Anyhow. This isn't the sophisticated part. This shelf is going to be relatively simple. What is perhaps a little bit overly complicated is the mounting system that I'm going to use. And that's where I think there could be some simplifications that'll work really well. Okay, so this thing is going to be mounted on the wall. That's not going to change. And it'll be mounted using screws and roll plugs. So that's not going to change either. I've got number 8 screws here. Where the design starts to get a little bit complicated is in the mount itself. What I'm trying to accomplish is to get the thing to level no matter how off the roll plugs are. If you've ever mounted anything with 2 screws on a wall, you know that it's a virtual impossibility to get the mounting screws at the same height. That's just a law of nature. And so what I wanted to do was add an after-the-fact adjustment. So there'll be a screw, or two screws actually, drilled into the wall using rawl plugs because I'm not going to hit studs. And the screw heads will fit through a keyhole, and then they can slide up. Now they're gonna, there we go. So they're going to slide up and down. And then there's an adjustment screw that I've mounted here on the top that will let me push this thing up and down. Or I'll just, there's two of them, one on each side, and I can just drive them forward and backwards until I get the thing level. Now, in making this thing, the reason I call it overly sophisticated or overly complicated is because there were a lot of steps in making this. I needed to bore a large shallow hole to accommodate the screw head up here, a longer narrow hole down the length that I then threaded using 1024 SAE, which would correspond roughly to 5 millimeters with a 1 millimeter pitch in metric. And then I needed a large keyhole and a T-slaughter to go up and down to make room for this fat washer. And the fat washer, yeah, that was 3D printed. So in the end, there were a large number of steps. Remember, the thing that I'm trying to accomplish is a way to adjust the level of this thing after it's mounted on the wall, where the screws are virtually guaranteed not to be at the same height. So, simplify this design. That's my challenge to you. Have at it. So, I'm not sure how weird this video is. I'm not sure whether you'll react to it really positively or negatively. Give me a sense of how it played by writing something in the comments. Most of all, I'd like to hear your suggestions for making this simpler. Maybe using, I don't know, wooden wedges or something. Yeah, so that's it for me for today. If the reaction to this is positive, maybe there'll be more in this vein, but whatever. Listen, you have a passion for something, share it. Kill the lights, will ya?
Sure, turning the bench lights off.